Okay, so welcome to the commentary for Towards Lefebvrian, Socio-Nature, a film about rhythm, nature and science. I'm Phil.
Hi, and I'm James.
And James has never listened to a commentary track, so he's been quite sarcastic about this whole idea.
Well, I think a film should stand on its own two legs.
And those are two legs that you really don't want to see, as long as it was along with my back. Now we thought we'd do a commentary because it's actually quite a tricky thing to respond to referees' comments on a film, and we thought, well, some of this we can do through reshoots, but actually reshooting the whole lot would be quite difficult. And so a commentary to respond to some of the specific things that were said, we thought would be a good and not in any way lazy way to do things.
Well, to be honest, the referees found it quite hard to referee a film. They tended to make comments and then qualify them, saying, well, I'm not really sure if you can reshoot that or change that. They didn't really know what the parameters were for refereeing this either, so it's all been a bit of a voyage into the unknown, I guess you could say. And
this scene here illustrates the problems for us doing reshoots. We did this in the summer when it was gloriously sunny, and of course we're now doing the reshoots. Well, we did the reshoots in the winter, and it'd been raining quite a lot, so difficult to kind of get things to match in.
The day we did the reshoot, it was absolutely throwing it down with rain. It was almost dark. It's freezing cold. So problems of continuity, really.
This is Julian Clark, who just started work here at Birmingham when we did this. This is Rosie Day, similarly. So we basically went to new colleagues and said, by the way, we're shooting a film, and kind of blackmailed them into doing it. So obviously don't get a job at Birmingham, because this is what will happen to you. I suppose we should actually start addressing some of the referees' comments. That's Leslie there, who's a physical geographer and actually reads her bit out more coherently than anybody else.
Yeah, although she claims not to understand a word of it.
Which seemed fair.
She could be a newsreader. The
main referee's comment, really from Gail, was about that it was very wordy and very dense and comes at you very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an obvious issue when you try and turn an academic paper into a screenplay. The academic paper I wrote was primarily a theoretical paper. The topic's quite theoretical. There's lots of long words, rhythm analysis, Lefebvrian, and so on. So when you turn it into a screenplay and you see it on video, it's a different form of engagement with the text. You can't go back and reread a sentence like maybe you do when you're reading a paper. Yeah,
and we just kept screwing up saying words like Lefebvrian rhythm analysis. I mean, the very first thing we filmed, the opening sentence, just involved collapsing with laughter because we just screwed it up on the very first take.
Yeah, and weirdly that hadn't even occurred to us as that it might be a problem until we sat down and turned the camera on and looked at the script and tried to say it, and suddenly you're thinking, what fool put those as the first two words?
I should say this is part of the reshoots. We're wearing hats for the great reason to try not to have problems matching our hairstyles in.
Yeah, our hair had changed radically from the summer to the winter, as I'm sure you can appreciate.
Because with this high quality of filming that we've done here, obviously every sort of pore of our skin is obvious in the shooting. We should say a big thanks to Citadel, or they're not called Citadel anymore, Click, who's the University of Birmingham's media centre, or part of the media centre anyway, and they lent us the video camera to do this, although it was all cut on my computer using free software we get from Microsoft because we didn't have anything better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth saying, I mean, we filmed most of this, in fact all of the original paper in half a day, then the reshoots in half a day. We're doing most scenes in 1 or 2 takes. Neither of us had ever read things out to camera before. We didn't have time to learn the lines. We tried to learn parts of the script, but what with it being highly dense theory, that was quite tricky too. So we're trying to read from paper while speaking to camera, which was actually quite tricky.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're not professionals at this at all, and so actually making this paper was very much a learning curve. You can see actually on the reshoots, things look a little bit more coherent because we worked out the best way to do it would be to sellotape the lines to the camera tripod, so you could actually look at the camera and not be looking at a script.
Yeah.
But I mean, basically, one of the things about this kind of intensity of words that kicks in while doing this, when actually sort of literally reading out an academic paper, which is doing, is that you start to think, well, how do people actually make documentaries?
Yeah, TV documentary.
Because, it's all very well to sort of read an academic paper and be able to skip back and go and look at other things, but when you actually look at what a documentary does, I mean, they don't actually say very much in a documentary, and you always have things sort of coming back and repeating the core messages. And you have these clips from talking heads, and really they don't say very much. When you speak to people who've ever been on, done a bit of TV, John Thorns, who works downstairs, has done a fair amount of TV, and he'll have 15 seconds worth of clip in a documentary, and he'll have been interviewed for several hours.
Yeah, they have a lot less material in them. There's a lot of lingering shots of scenes. They tend to go on a lot longer. This paper's only just over 15 minutes long, so I'm not sure if it would have been possible to have lots of lingering shots of scenes and music interludes and filler, if you like. I mean, in some ways it's a different medium. Marshall McLuhan always claimed TV was a low-intensity medium, a cool medium. So people didn't engage with it as deeply. It was kind of something your eyes flit over and shouldn't be too hectic. Which makes you wonder whether this paper would work better if you didn't watch it and you just listened to it, like a radio broadcast or something.
I mean, it was funny when we presented this at the Royal Geographical Society conference. We did a kind of performance along with the paper, and part of that involved us kind of lying on the floor, eyes closed, just letting the video play, which kind of freaked out people who came into the session late.
Yeah, it was a bit weird.
But we both said afterwards that actually just sitting and listening to what we were saying, the paper made a lot more sense. And obviously we've been living with the paper for quite some time, and so got our heads into it in the same way that you would slowly reading an academic paper. So that was quite interesting, but we had that worry when we actually presented it, that there's too much going on. You've got these visual images, you've got this very dense text, you've got this performance that we were doing. Is this too much? Is it too much to take in? And yes, it was.
It probably was. I mean, it would have been nice to have some more non-verbal stuff. Gail was saying we could have examples that other people have worked on where they've turned various types of science into music or some kind of aural art and so on. And there are plenty of examples of this, but again you get into technical issues like copyright, and to be honest, in 15 minutes there's just no time to do this. So I guess the paper was never meant to be like a TV documentary, but if we did this kind of thing again, we might aim to do something a bit longer to make it a slightly easier text to engage with.
I mean, the other thing is that we're actually sort of hitting our talent wall in some ways. It's relatively easy to put together something that looks like this with a few bits of overshots. Oh, that terrible camera movement there. Oh, hang on, let's talk about the music for a second.
Yeah.
This music here, which overlays graph, it's a basic sort of 80s synthesizer sound, and it does sound like something off the Terminator soundtrack. It really does.
Which is no bad thing.
No. I mean, we could pretend that we actually stole it directly from the Terminator soundtrack. But talking about hitting our talent wall, here's a perfect example. This is one of the reshoots, and we've got this wonderful background here with all these ruined computers, but we didn't have any lights, so we're relying on the ambient light in this little corridor
which was basically a stairwell. But to be fair, this is a technology wall and a time wall. It's a resource wall as much as a talent wall. I mean, give us a week, we could have done this really well.
Well, we could, but there's kind of diminishing returns as well. That to make things just a little bit better requires a hell of a lot more effort. I mean, cutting in nice music and getting all the clearances on the music, you wouldn't necessarily notice a huge difference as the viewer.
No.
But it would be an enormous amount of extra effort for the producers.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a fair point.